I don't know if this is going to trigger me or what, but someone in the comments, chat out to you, mentioned this, um, and I'm really curious as to why. What happened. It was probably the right reason, but I'd love to know. Like, I didn't even know any of this. I didn't even know this was a thing. So yeah, always comment down below on YouTube, man. What you guys want me to react to, and hit that subscribe button. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to History of Middle-earth. Today we are looking at Tolkien's unfinished story of the New Shadow.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
I did begin a story placed about 100 years after the downfall, but it proved both sinister and depressing. Since we are dealing with men, it is inevitable that we should be concerned with the most regrettable feature of their nature, their quick satiety with good, so that the people of Gondor in times of peace, justice and prosperity would become discontented and restless, while the dynasts descended from Aragorn would become just kings and governors, like Denethor, or worse. I found that even so early there was an outcrop of revolutionary plots about a centre of secret satanistic religion, while Gondorian boys were playing at being orcs and going around doing damage. I could have written a thriller about the plot and its discovery and overthrow, but it would have been just that. Not worth doing. The New
Sounds
Shadow is
interesting.
the name of the tale that Tolkien abandoned. It was his attempt to write a sequel to his epic fantasy tale of The Lord of the Rings. His plan had originally been, as said in the previous quote, that it would have been set around 100 years after the fall of Sauron and the destruction of the ring. Although later, Tolkien would debate whether to change this in his mind slightly and did consider actually starting the story in around the year 220 of the Fourth Age, which would basically mean that Aragorn would have passed on by this point, and that it would have been set in the time of his son, Aldarion. Tolkien had never really got far with this idea. He believed it was a story that would have become too much of a thriller, rather than the style that he truly wanted to write.
Fantasy.
And this is something that shows that Tolkien really did see his world as more as though it was a history book, rather than just some epic fantasy fiction.
And that's why it is the way it is. Exactly that perspective from Tolkien. Genius.
It also would have been a very different story for Tolkien in the sense that it would have only been about men, not his other fantasy races. In fact, the story, or at least the fraction of the story that he had ever written, had a more depressing feel about it than his previous epic. The New Shadow actually starts with explaining that the epic events of the War of the Ring are already turning into little more than great tales to the men of Gondor, as very few were still alive or have any memory of around that time. And of those that did, they would have only been very young. We actually see one of our main characters is a man called Borlas, who is in fact the son of Beregond, and that is the same Beregond who befriends Pippin in The Return of the King. And obviously with these kind of links, this is where you can see that the year in which this story would have taken place was perhaps still subject to change. But anyway, he describes the feeling of evil within the hearts of men, using the term of a dark tree, in the sense of its roots digging deep and being near impossible to remove forever. But that dark tree also has other meanings that we will get to in a minute. Now when you compare that to our introduction to the peaceful and beautiful Shire from The Lord of the Rings, you could see that there was very much a different tone. And would this have been a bad thing? Probably not, in the sense of there were definitely depressing sections to The Lord of the Rings in his other novels, so it was not like he was not able to write this kind of thing.
Such good art.
And I
I love
imagine
the
there would
art.
have been very few of his fans who would not have actually enjoyed it. But if the heart of the writer...
It would have been interesting, but yeah, it just being men, like you don't need all the races, but like that's what makes Lord of the Rings great, man. Like if it was just men, then it wouldn't have been boring. It sounds really interesting, but it sounds like you said it would have veered a bit off fantasy.
himself was not in it, then it is hard to argue that he should have continued. After all, even his son, Christopher, said that it was a shame he never completed the work and abandoned it so early, as even if it had been a thriller, surely it would have been a very remarkable thriller nonetheless. Now if we continue to look at the part of the story he actually did write, The two characters of Borlas and Ceylon talk about the growing discontent within their realm after the death of the Great King, referring to King Elisar, and they question what this growing unrest would even accomplish. There is even mention of an evil cult on the rise led by someone or something called Herumor. This cult is also referred to as this dark tree, like we mentioned before, and this cult would worship the likes of Sauron, Morgoth and Saruman. It is also strange how the children, with their growing disconnect from the events of the past, even play games like Orcs and Soldiers, or even refer to bad jobs as orc work, almost disconnecting the truly evil beings with these throwaway sayings. You can kind of get the feeling here, and see why it was maybe just a bit depressing. The story seems to say how men cannot live in peace, how there is always some kind of fascination by some form of evil. But sadly, that is all we will ever get on this. Or at least anytime soon, with J.R.R. Tolkien abandoning it,
No, I
and
get it,
Christopher
I get it.
Tolkien having never planned on continuing it either from his father's wishes to not pursue it further, then it is unlikely anyone in the Tolkien family from here on out will either. Maybe in the future, if the rights ever changed hands, we might get something, but we can never really say that that would be a good thing for sure. I mean, just look at Star Wars. So, as much
How could they?
as it is fun to imagine what happens later on in the lands of Middle-earth, imagine is all we will ever do, or at least for any time soon. As of Middle-earth,
I gotta
be
see
a
that
good
again.
thing for sure. I mean, just look at Star Wars.
Who is that? Isn't that someone on a what's it called?
So, as much as it is fun to
Quidditch?
imagine what happens later on in the lands of Middle-earth, imagine is all we will ever do, or at least for any time soon. And to be honest, I'm okay with that. People can make up fanfictions if they wish. Some will be good, some won't. And you could decide for yourself if you want to read them, and then if you want to believe in them after that.
So I know nothing about Morgoth. Just FYI. And one of the next videos on the channel will be learning about this guy. I'm excited.
But if the man himself said that it would just be too miserable and depressing to finish, and that is when he already had stories like The Children of Húrin, then I could accept his decision. And that is where we will leave this video for you today. After all, there is not too much on this subject. But that does bring me to my question
You
for you
got
guys,
you got respect.
and that is, would you be happy to see someone else write a story set in the Fourth Age?
No.
Whether that be someone...
They don't need to. They don't need to. Prequels is what I want. Prequels. But obviously it needs to be done right. But prequels, man, even just singular movies about certain things in the First and Second Age, or even just Gandalf's travels before all the Lord of the Rings stuff, or Aragorn's, or Legolas is like, I'd love to see that kind of stuff. And I know people are going to be like, oh, but they might not do it justice. There's always that risk. There's always that risk that they might not do the films justice. But what if they get them right? Like there were probably people saying about the Lord of the Rings films, what if they this shouldn't be a thing, they wouldn't do it justice. There were people, 100% there were people saying that. 100%. But look what happened. All I'm saying is I'd love to see more Lord of the Rings stuff. So more people know about this amazing series.
of the Tolkien line, or someone else entirely? Or would you prefer that the times after the fall of Sauron were left completely alone?
Yeah.
Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Also, it is that time to give a massive shout.
That was a good video. Just look at Star Wars. If Disney got a hold of the world of Middle-earth. Oh God, yeah, no, not Disney. Oh please, no. No. It's probably best to leave it as it is, yeah. I like the idea of continuing stories because life doesn't stop because one bad guy was beaten. That's true. But I feel that doesn't work to Middle-earth. The final defeat of Sauron was meant to signify the final destruction of the evils. Exactly. All other evils and injustice in the world will be more mundane, committed and perpetuated by men. Yeah. The elves would leave and the Ents were going to sleep. the dwarves and hobbits would fade away. Yeah, I agree. If someone purchased the rights to the Beatles and started making new music under that name, it wouldn't really be Beatles music, would it? Crazy way of putting it, but a good one. I think the idea behind this story says a lot about Tolkien's genius and his insight into human nature. Very true. The best stories end. Return of the King concluded perfectly. I completely agree, man. Just look at Star Wars. Luke's throwing. Oh my god. Oh, what did they do to my Star Wars? Lord of the Rings is great because it ended where it ended. Unlike Star Wars, Tolkien's work was. Oh man, please stop bringing up Star Wars, guys. I love how Star Wars and Lord of the Rings are like. I'd put Harry Potter in there. Like, I'm pretty sure people love most of those franchises. Um, if you love Lord of the Rings, I feel like you'd like Harry Potter and Star Wars. You may not, like, right? I'm not saying it, but I'd say most people do, right? Um, that was a good video. That was a really good video. I enjoyed that. Yeah. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Really appreciate your time. Be sure to subscribe. We're on the road to 200 subscribers, and comment down below what games you want me to play or what videos you want me to react to. Thanks for being here, and don't forget, I stream daily on twitch.tv/OmarioRpg. Come say hello. Take care.